time I did a fashion tour, courtesy of Fakir, who's a really big fan of the channel, and he was really nice enough as a Parisian native to take me around Paris and give me a bit of a fashion tour of the best spots. And of course I wanted to go to a lot of bookstores, and I ended up spending a lot of money on books. It's quite funny because I've come to Paris and I didn't buy any clothes, all I bought were books. So I'll quickly run through some of the books. I went to the Alaia Atelier, and close to there they have this like bookstore. They're really good books, but the book that I really wanted from this bookstore, of course, was the Alaia book itself. It comes in 2 editions, so it comes in an English edition and a French edition. Of course, I have the English edition, but this is it. It's such a good book. I mean, I've read up on Alaia, but this book is so detailed. Like, sure you guys can see how detailed it is. I won't show you too much for copyright reasons, but it's so detailed. So I'm really looking forward to reading this book. And of course, I spent so much money on books in the store. I got this like free tote bag. It actually cost like 30 euros. So that was like a nice touch, although it's kind of expected when you spend that much money at a bookstore. So that book is something I'm really looking forward to. I bought some other things in different bookstores. Like I got this really cool Lanvin book. And it's funny because amongst all the different sort of, you know, fashion designers and couturiers and stuff, I feel like Lanvin is one of the designers that I could definitely read up more on. Like there's definitely a hole in my fashion knowledge when it comes to Lanvin. And also why I really want to read more about Lanvin is like, I've read a lot about Paul Poiret, and Poiret and Lanvin, they kind of come up a lot side by side in a lot of books that I've read. So I feel like just learning more about Lanvin in general will increase just my knowledge of fashion history and stuff like that. I think when it comes to fashion history, people think I'm like some encyclopedia. I'm really not. I'm too young to have read so many books. You can only read so many books a day, especially when you like work and do other things with your life. Like I was going to school and had like work to do. But with time, I think just my knowledge will get better and better with these things. So yeah, Lanvin book, looking forward to it. And I think this one is actually in, I'm not sure if you can see it, maybe I'll show you one page, but it's not just in English. I think it's in German and English. So like one page will be in English and then one page will be in like German, which is quite interesting. I don't know why it's done like that. It's the only thing that I've seen that's kind of done like that. It's so strange. Kind of like one page is in English and one page is in German. It's so weird. Like, yeah, but it's interesting. It's interesting. This is a book on Levi's. And it's just about Levi's jacket. There was another one that was exactly the same, but on like Levi's like pants or trousers, wherever you're from, whatever you call it. But I could only afford to get one of them because these are really expensive books. They're like really rare and they're printed in Japan. And a lot of the ones that I've seen in the UK, they're quite expensive because of like the import. But I found a good price, and the euro exchange rate to pounds was quite good. So I bit the bullet. But this book is like, I think, damn near 100 euros, if not more. So really expensive, but it's so good. It tells you about all the different details of all the different Levi's jackets by time period. So in terms of just learning about the history of Levi's, because I feel like Levi's and denim, the history of denim, kind of go side by side. And Levi's is just really important history-wise. Like historically inspired so many brands, especially in Japan. And Japan now is the mecca of denim. So just a really good book to have and to read. This, beside my book on Alaia, is probably my favorite book that I've picked up in Paris so far. This is a book on Alexey Brodovitch. Now, if you're a fan of the channel, if you've watched the channel for a while, you would know that I did a project on Diana Vreeland's work when Diana Vreeland was an editor at Harper's Bazaar, but of course also at Vogue. And learning about her work at Harper's Bazaar, I learned about a guy called Alexey Brodovitch. Alexey Brodovitch was the art director when Diana Vreeland was at Harper's Bazaar. So he was responsible for designing the spreads of the print magazines, how things would look, colours, how text would be arranged, that sort of stuff. And he is a very iconic graphic designer. He's the reason why, You know, you have magazines like System magazine that use negative space like that, and the text alignments are like that. Not just System, but a lot of magazines. I just reference System because it's one of my favorite magazines, and I noticed that. So very, very, very iconic graphic designer from the Harper's Bazaar days. Inspired so many modern graphic designers. So yeah, Alexey Brodovitch is something I'm looking forward to. And why I'm also looking forward to reading this book is because when I was doing the project at Sunset Martins, we have these really crazy deadlines. I think this like Diana Vreeland project, we had crazy little amount of time, maybe even a week. And there's only so much you can learn in a week, even if you're just reading all day for a week. So it'll be good to finally, now that I finished school, go back to some of these projects and take my time with the research. I'm really going to enjoy that. Another book, well, I guess you can call this it's not really a book, but it's more of a visual sort of thing. It's a magazine curated by Sacai, so I'm guessing that Chitose Abe was like very involved with it. But it's just like cool images, cool imagery. Not everything I want to buy is just text and history and knowledge. I also do like to learn from things visually, but curated magazines, not magazines that are just ad spreads. If I want to see something visually, I want to see curated images. So this is really cool because I just get inspired. Like, I still do photography. For guys that are new to the channel, I've been a photographer for a while before I became a fashion journalist. That was like my job. I used to shoot like weddings and stuff. So I still do photography for fun. I shoot on film, and I shoot most of the pictures for my magazine. So if you've had issue 1 of my magazine, I shot most of the shots in there. So yeah, it's just good to get inspiration visually. And the last book in this like book haul is on Gianfranco Ferre, and just his work at Dior, basically. This is really cool because I feel like Gianfranco is a designer that when people talk about Dior, they don't really talk about, like when you think of Dior's history, people talk about Christian Dior, then of course they talk about like the prodigy, Yves Saint Laurent, who took over. And then it just skips. And people talk about how cool like John Galliano's work is. People talk about Russ Simmons, Maria Gattucciuri, Kim Jones. I feel like there's a gap. And of course I know about Gianfranco's work, but I just feel like, especially as a fashion journalist, I'm always looking for different nuggets of information. So I'll buy a fashion book, read it. I like to read most of my books like 2 or 3 times just to like retain the knowledge. And I'll read it, gain all the information there is to gain from the book. Then I'll buy another book that will have similar information, but then there'll be a few nuggets that are different. So I feel like there are never enough books you can buy about a designer, because there's always something new to learn and a different perspective in every book, and like different information sometimes. So this is really good. I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, these were basically all my pickups in Paris. But thank you so much for watching. I had an amazing time. It was a real blessing to write for Vogue Runway, covering designers that, you know, I follow their careers and I know a lot about their work. For me, to Ganryu, who's of course one of the people that came from the Comme des Garçons world and worked under Junya Watanabe. Then you have people like Walter van Beirendonck, who I've already interviewed on the channel. But I've also just been a fan of the Antwerp 6. My favorite designer is Antoine Meester, as people know, or being able to interview Yohji Yamamoto. I mean, Yohji Yamamoto is where it all started for me when it comes to fashion. Yohji Yamamoto was one of the first avant-garde designers I ever learnt about. And I used to wear Y3 all the time because I couldn't afford the mainline. I still can't afford the mainline, actually. So I have just a lot of Y3 pieces that I've bought over the years. And it was crazy that not only did I go to the show, but because I was covering it for Vogue, I got to interview Yohji face to face. That is like one of the highlights of my fashion career. So I wanted to say a big shout out to Luke Leach for believing in me. Luke Leach is the reason why I was able to write for Vogue Runway in the first place. I'm hoping that I will be able to do more stuff for Vogue Runway. It's not a given though. So hopefully they like some of the work I did, and you guys can check out my 3 reviews. I've also reopened my Patreon. So if you want access to extra content, my Patreon podcast where I talk a bit more candid about stuff that I experience in the fashion industry. And I'll be back with another video very soon. Whew. Fucking hell, I need to drink water.